Look at what the president's been about since he's been in office. It has been really about waiving the work requirement, especially when it has to do with the food stamp program. So with all the rancor and everything, I decided to ask the Congressional Research Service, which is, as you know, a nonpartisan arm of the Congress, to take a look at, and this is their study, to take a look at the history of the SNAP program, the food stamp program under the Obama administration. Well, the Obama administration asked for the waiver of the work requirement in the stimulus bill, and what we have seen is that the president continually has supported waiving the work requirement. And the impact of that on the food stamp program is we've seen a doubling of the population that would otherwise be required to work under the food stamp population that is now that were benefiting from the program when you didn't put the work requirement in.
But Congressman, could you argue that a lot of those people are on food stamps because the poverty rate has increased, the economy's been iffy at best, and so it's natural that it would increase to this level?
There's no question that in a tougher economy you're going to see the rolls swell, but that population only swelled about over 40%. What we're talking about is able-bodied individuals without dependents who would otherwise be subjected to the work requirement. That population itself more than doubled. There was over 100 and some % increase. And this is the point. Nobody wants to take away these benefits from people in need. What we want to do is make sure that they begin to need them less, which means they get back to work. And this work requirement includes the ability to go to a training program. And again, so it makes no sense as to why the president would be asking for these waivers. History has shown he's supported waivers throughout his presidency on the SNAP program or the food stamp program, which is why I believe you see him asking for the waiver of the work requirement again under welfare.
But you know, you could flip this around with I understand where you're coming from, Congressman, but Democrats will seize on your remarks today, others on the heels of Mitt Romney's 47% remarks, and say that Republicans have a dismissive view of the needy. How would you answer that?
That's not true. I mean, we have a bill on the floor that we'll vote on this afternoon, that we'll vote on today. That's a bill that overturns this move to lift the waiver requirements for work. And what we say is this: we don't want to take away from people in need the safety net. We don't. What we want to try and do is make sure that less people need that safety net, and the way you do it is you help them get back to work. You help them access training programs. You know, we want life to work for people. We don't want to just rob them of what they need. We want them to need the safety net less and to get back into a productive mode so they can begin to determine their own destiny. That's what we want to try and do.
By the way, I did mention Mitt Romney in the 47% remarks, and he's trying to bounce back from that. What did you think of what he said?
Well, again, I think that what we want to be focused on is the fact that, you know, Republicans care about people's well-being. You know, the purpose of some of the fiscal policies we put on the table is to actually sustain the safety nets. Again, to make sure the people who need the safety nets have access to those safety nets.
So you don't think he was throwing half the people in this country under the bus or saying, "The hell with you, I'm not getting anywhere with you"?
No, I don't. I think, again, it's a distraction that the Obama campaign is trying to put out there to take away from their record, which has been a failure, because I do believe that you talk to most people in the country, they know that we can do better in America. They know that their life can work better if it were just for better leadership in Washington.
But are you worried about how it's resonating in the polls? And I know, and you and I talked at the convention, how it's very early to make a big deal out of polls and swings, but in battleground states, things are not looking good for this ticket, and more to the point, maybe even the Senate for Republicans. In your own state of Virginia, the Democrat has pulled out to a 4 or 5 point lead, depending on the poll. So hopes of the Republicans taking the Senate might look a little iffy now. Who knows, as you remind me again. But that somehow Republicans are not seizing the initiative or botching it. What do you say?
Well, I know in Virginia, Neil, that the issue is about jobs. It's about helping people get back to work. We have a huge issue in the Commonwealth about the defense cuts.
Right.
Obviously, we are a defense-rich state, and this president has failed to put a solution on the table that would help avoid the defense cuts.
Yeah, but you guys signed on to that sequestration that now means these defense cuts, right?
Well, as you know, Neil, the House has taken action to say we don't want these defense cuts. We want to act in a fiscally responsible way and make sure that we are beginning to slim down the federal spending, but don't do it in a way which disproportionately impacts our defense-related jobs.
Were you surprised then, Congressman, when Mitt Romney had criticized the whole sequestration thing, and actually both sides, Republicans and the White House, for how that was handled, what, a year ago now, right, sir? He said this sequestration idea of the White House, which is cutting our defense, I think is an extraordinary miscalculation. These are his remarks on Meet the Press. He went on to say, I thought it was a mistake on the part of the White House to propose it, and I think it was a mistake for Republicans to go along with it.
Well, the reality is we were in a very difficult situation with the country poised to really enter into a stage in which we'd not been into, which was the possibility that the country would default on its debt. We didn't ever want that to happen. No one wants to bring this country into a default. And so we operated in good faith that we could come together and solve these problems for the good of all the country. And unfortunately, the president, his administration, has not seemed willing to want to join us in trying to solve these problems. Again, that's what this election's about, really, Neil. It's about, are we going to have a leader in place to solve problems, and really one that understands the plight of so many Americans that want to get back to work, and a president who understands how to create an environment for small businesses to begin creating jobs again.
What does your gut tell you then, Congressman, about how we're going to deal with this fiscal train wreck we're looking at the end of the year when all the Bush rates expire and we've got the Medicare payroll tax issue to deal with, A&T, I could go on and on and on, but they all sort of pile up like planes backing up at LaGuardia here at the same time. Is it your thinking that everything is kicked down the road for another quarter or another 3 months, 6 months until everyone can deal with this in a calmer fashion? A lame duck Congress deals with it? What?
Well, I think so much of the existence, if you will, of the fiscal cliff comes from the very difficult time that the country's been to, and frankly the disagreements in Washington over the last 2 years. Much of that has to do with tax rates. And this election will decide whether tax rates go up or not. If President Obama is reelected, taxes are going up. If Mitt Romney is elected, taxes will not go up. And that is a big part of the logjam here, of a very different view of how you approach the question of the fiscal cliff, is whether you think that Washington needs more of people's hard-earned money, especially in a tough economic time, or whether we want to focus on growth, want to focus on getting people back to work, and do the necessary things we have to do here in Washington so that the federal government begins to live within its means, just like small businesses and working families. But do you think that
shy of the lame duck Congress having to deal with that the best we can look forward to? I talked to one of you, a prominent Democrat counterpart of yours, I can't reveal his name, but said to the point, we'll probably look at doing a maybe 3 or 6 month extension of all rates and then hash this out next year, regardless of who's elected.
Well, I would certainly hope, and I know that Mitt Romney has committed that if he is elected, that we're going to extend the existing rates, including the individual rates, cap gains, dividends, and the rest, for a certain amount of time so we can engage in tax reform.
Now, I want to update on foreign policy, if you don't mind indulging me, sir. We're getting word from the President on Air Force One today saying that there's no doubt in his mind that this was indeed a terrorist attack that resulted in the death of our Libyan ambassador and 3 others. It does not seem to jibe with what administration officials had said just days ago. But if that is the case, you have argued, regardless, we have to be engaged in that region. Not too long ago you said withdrawing from this region would embolden the extremists and justify Osama bin Laden's strategy, leaving the moderates who share our values and who desire democracy to combat the forces of violence alone. Now, Ron Paul has come out and said, enough, stop it, not a penny more, get out now. What do you say to that?
Well, I mean, the question is whether we believe in America that we should lead or not. And, you know, like it or not, you know, we have reached the point of being the world's only superpower. And if we want to continue to be able to operate in a secure way, securing our citizens here at home, our interests abroad, making sure that our businesses stay competitive abroad, we've got to project our leadership. There are so many of our allies, especially in that region. First and foremost, Israel, that faces an existential threat. There are other allies